Welcome to the Inside Games Roundup, the only gaming news show brave enough to still want a Nintendo Switch 2 after all of the controversy.
Been a wave of, let's call them disappointments. Other people might have stronger words, but wanting a Switch 2 is almost moot at this point. We don't even know if we're going to be able to get one. You know, it turns out President Trump wasn't the gamers champion we all thought he was going to be.
Unfortunately, we are forced to talk about politics just a little bit because it's literally affecting everyone's lives. We would much rather rip on the Switch 2's price and battery.
Hey, porque no los dos, right? Actually, shit, we should probably keep it to English. We don't want this show shipped off to El Salvador.
All right. Let's. That's more politics.
Oops, sorry.
I mean, it's true again. Luckily, we have some other gaming news that'll allow us to retreat from the world a bit. Titanfall 3 actually might exist. That's super cool. And Bethesda's QA union has approved a strike.
They aren't on strike yet, technically, to be clear, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Also, we have more layoffs to report because it's 2025 and that's just how it is these days.
Yeah, so let's kick off the news by throwing to the one man who's the living embodiment of, quote, that's just how it is. Brian Garr.
I'm gonna old man yell at Cloud for a second. I paid $50 for Double Dragon in 1988. Y'all stop crying about $80. That was like $1 million today. Anyway, yes, Switch 2. This is what we're talking about when the Switch 2 got announced. Would Trump's tariffs affect the launch and or price of the console? Well, we got some bad news. According to a company statement to many media outlets, Nintendo said pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start April 9th, 2025 in order to assess the potential impacts of tariffs and evolving market conditions. Nintendo will update timing at a later date.
Nintendo also said that their June 5th launch date for Switch 2 is unchanged. We can hope that it stays unchanged, but yeah, it's messed up and everybody's in a state of turmoil. It's just general confusion across the board.
Yeah, as is the case with lots of different industries here in the US, not just video games. Trump's tariffs are having a major effect on pricing and availability for any goods coming in or going out of the USA. And so far, I want to say none of those effects are good. I don't think anybody really has said, hey, this is great. One of the worst days for the stock market in the last 5 years is happening right now at the time of reporting. So we'll see how long these negotiating tactics last, or really how long the American consumer will put up with them. That's really what it kind of comes down to.
I don't know if we'll even have the option of putting up with it or not at this point. Decisions are being made for us, but I'm just scared that there's enough people with enough disposable income that can ride this out and are willing to, and that'll just, man, it's gonna really raise the line of what middle class is considered. And I think a lot of us are going to tumble below it if that happens. Speaking of tumbling on down, it seems that the Switch 2's battery life is actually worse than the original Switch.
Yeah, there's been a lot written about the Switch 2 in the last few days, to say the least, mostly centered around price, especially the $80 Mario Kart World price tag reveal.
It's $90 physical in the case you wanted to buy a physical copy. But another Achilles heel of the incoming console may have been revealed. Its battery, which is pretty important for a handheld.
Yeah, as a 90-minute ROG Ally user, it can be a real pain to have to lug around another brick just to keep it going. So, you know, the math on the Switch 2 isn't bad, but it's not the greatest. A lot of outlets seized on a handout from Nintendo, indicating that the battery life was approximately 2 to 6.5 hours. That depends on what game you're playing. You can presume that the more robust, more graphically replete games are going to burn that battery a lot faster.
Yeah, but it's not great that 2 to 6.5 hours. It's not great compared to older Switches. I checked Nintendo's support page. The original 2017 baseline Switch did better than the Switch 2. It had a minimum of 2.5 hours of battery life. And then you go up into the higher end. The OLED's battery started at 4.5 hours of battery life on the low end.
This is despite the fact that the Switch 2's battery will be physically larger than those in the older models. In Nintendo's Ask the Developer series, Switch 2 producer Koichi Kawamoto stated that the battery itself is slightly bigger, around 1.2 times larger than the Switches, to handle the new hardware, but apparently not big enough.
It's worth noting, I think, that the maximum runtime, the 6.5 hours, is the same for the original Switch models and Switch 2. So really, it's 30 minutes on the low end, which percentage-wise is quite a bit. You know, that's like 25% of the battery when it's just 2 hours. But hopefully when we see that amazing display running at 120 hertz, we'll be willing to trade away 30 minutes for it.
Meanwhile, some people are suggesting that the tariffs, back to those again, could bump up the price of the Switch 2 to as much as $600, which would, I feel like 600 would be a disaster for a launch console.
Yeah, I would agree. It comes as people are already mad about the higher price of the Switch 2 which will retail for $450 here in the US. And more notably, like we said, Mario Kart World at $80 for the digital, $90 for the physical. Now some analysts are stating that higher prices like that could become the norm. Yay.
Could? Oh, come on. Yeah. You got to say that if you're an analyst just to account for all possibilities, but let's be real. It's absolutely going to become the norm. And since Nintendo, of all companies, is the first one to push up into the $80 territory, that's all sparked a backlash from the gamers that's threatening to overshadow the big reveal. We should be celebrating right now, parades and dances, but instead we're opening our wallets and one moth is flying out. This is pretty fun. People making their opinions known. A recent Nintendo Direct Treehouse live stream was just flooded, spammed with people commenting, "Drop the price," in all caps. That must be fun to see, exactly as a trade war is kicking up.
Yeah, so fair to say the rollout of the Switch 2 has not exactly been smooth, because if you're Nintendo, you don't want people to be talking about its price. You want people to be saying, "Oh, you can ride as one of the cows on Moo Moo Meadows," but that's a lot less cute for $80. So we'll see. We'll see, but I don't know if it's an Xbox One level disaster, but it hasn't been a great rollout.
Yeah, this is a real bad time for this console because of all the trade war tariff bullshit that we're dealing with. And this is going to sound stupid because Nintendo would never do this, but they should have anticipated that it was going to be a nightmare because of all this other bullshit. And they should have been like, let's try and give these people sort of a little leeway on the price, and let's launch it at $399 like everybody had rumored. Honestly, I bet that $399, if they had launched at $399, then the $80 Mario Kart World maybe not as big of a shock. But now you've got the two, you got the $450 and you got the $80, and that's this might be a bridge too far.
I wonder. I have yet to see any consumer electronic that people refuse to buy because of price. I know that this is well down the enthusiast funnel, like Nintendo's up here, but even in the PC enthusiast scene, you can't buy new video cards. And even those, everybody acknowledges, are marked up $400 to $500. Now, granted, yeah, people down here, losers like me, we put all our money towards that. Switch ostensibly is going for families, something you buy for the kids, and paying an extra $100 for a new thing doesn't feel good. That said, yeah, this is really going to test Americans' desire to consume, and boy, do we love to do it. So I'm curious where those boundaries are, because I haven't seen them yet. And I don't, as much as people kick up dirt about this, they're still going to wipe the credit cards, I think.
I think some will, but I think this isn't like the original Switch, which was like a big form factor shift. So that was a completely different console from the Wii. This is like an iterative shift. So it's better, better hardware, better all that. But I don't know if some people will definitely buy it. But I wonder if it'll, just be, I don't think it's going to be the runaway success that the first Switch was.
You know what's interesting too about this is I remember reading a few days ago an article about the PS5 Pro. And when we reported on the PS5 Pro, I was like, this is not going to sell. They're not going to sell at this price. No way. And it did not sell. They reported that they were having very bad sales for the PS5 Pro. So it'll be really interesting to see, since this is Nintendo, because Nintendo generally can sell to everybody, whether or not they are going to reach those targets. Lawrence is exactly correct. If you're out there screaming drop the price on YouTube, don't buy the console. Don't buy Mario Kart World. Tell them with your wallet that you don't want this price, because if you do buy at $450 and you do buy at $80, Nintendo's going to be like, see, we told you.
Yeah, then it'll stay there for good.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it really does come down to Mario Kart. That's their banner franchise, and that's the one that's got to sell a Switch too. If I'm a parent and I'm getting a Switch for my kids and maybe I play Mario Kart, I don't look at Mario Kart World and be like, oh, well, clearly that's a whole new thing. Of course I have to spend $450 to play that Mario Kart instead of the one that I already have, and I don't have to pay any extra money for it. But yeah, Ryan, I think you might be right. It may not have that wow factor. But, I forgot about wheelchair basketball. That's going to get people in. I forgot about that one.
A new Mario Kart, though, for context, that is always their number one selling game. It is, for every console, Mario Kart's number one. So it is smart to launch with a new Mario Kart. But yeah, we'll see how strong it is, like Bruce said. Moving on, could Titanfall 3 finally be happening? Fans of the sci-fi shooter have been waiting forever for a sequel, and now 2 Apex Legends leakers, these are pretty well-known people, claim that Respawn is secretly working on it.
Ooh, well, this is exciting. On Twitter, leaker Yorotsuki posted an image of a Titanfall 3 logo, stating that the, quote, secret game they had previously teased is, in fact, the long-awaited third entry. They also claim the game will be revealed at the Game Awards in December 2025, with a planned 2026 release, next year. Another leaker, Osvaldo Torre, backed up this claim.
Seems surprisingly believable for a leak, right?
Yeah.
Titanfall 3 rumors have been around for a while now because we're all hoping every day. Insider Gaming reported that the game has already been canceled and shut down at least twice.
Oh.
With one of the reasons given because the game was, quote, too similar to Titanfall 2. That's not a problem. Just make another one, please. Call it 3. I don't care. Give me an excuse to play it again.
Remember that awesome game we made? Yeah, it's too much like that.
I know.
It's too close to the perfect game.
EA and Respawn have shot down Titanfall 3 rumors in the past, but yeah, the second one remains a big fan favorite, particularly its campaign, one of the best of its generation. So I would not be surprised at all to see this be a reality.
Respawn out there still making single player games, still carrying the torch. They love it. Speaking of people holding each other up, that's how I choose to see this. Bethesda's QA testers have approved strike authorization.
Yeah, more than 300 Bethesda's QA working on franchises like Fallout and The Elder Scrolls voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike, citing frustration over stalled contract negotiations with Microsoft.
Yeah, ZeniMax Workers United CWA announced that 94% of its members backed the strike authorization. Now, that does not mean a strike is happening, but it gives them the option to do so if talks don't move forward. The union has been pushing for the usual stuff, fair wages, better working conditions, but apparently negotiations have hit a wall.
Yeah, they've been on that wall for a while. I've been kind of following this in the background. I'll check in on the negotiations. And nearly every time there's an update saying Activision is still blackballing us. Like they won't reply to anything. They always delay everything. They've run over all their deadlines and like there's really no consequence. So it's pushing them into a strike and that's what you got to do. On that note, we got a quote here from a QA tester that worked on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Aubrey Litchfield said, quote, "We've had to continuously fight for what should be bare minimum." And that quote was given to Kotaku.
I believe that. Historically, QA... QA working conditions not very good. One major concern is the return to office policy, which employees say makes it harder to afford living expenses.
Yeah, they had a quote from somebody else saying, if you're expecting us to move physically to new, higher cost of living city, like you're not sort of making the money worth it. So yeah, the union was formed in 2023. It's already taken action once. It staged a one-day work stoppage last fall and filed an unfair labor practice charge against Microsoft. Those were over outsourcing concerns.
Yeah, for its part, Microsoft says progress is being made. That's comforting to hear, I guess. Quote, "We respect the team's right to express their viewpoints and are deeply committed to reaching a fair and equitable resolution," the company spokesperson told Kotaku. There you go. They're deeply committed to letting them say whatever they want. And then when it comes to signing a contract, it might get a little more iffy.
Maybe they can carve off, 10 million off the 40 million bonus that Nadella gets for a little bit of the QA. Maybe Satya throw him a bone or something.
I'm surprised I would think that it would mostly be at the Bethesda level, but I guess not. I guess you got to go all the way up the chain. Well, that's provided a chain still exists. It does for now, but guess what? It's another week, so there's been more layoffs in gaming.
Yeah, the wave of layoffs that has been washing over the industry for the last few years has hit Eidos Montreal. The studio, which is currently co-developing Fable with Playground Games, announced they're having to let go 75 employees.
Oh man, that doesn't bode well for the new Fable. I'm really looking forward to that game. In a statement shared on social media, the studio attributed the cuts to, quote, "one of our mandates coming to an end," but didn't provide further details. They said, "It is not a reflection of their dedication or skills, but unfortunately we don't have the capacity to entirely reallocate them to our other ongoing projects and services.
Yeah, this sucks because kind of like Respawn, Eidos Montreal was making some of the best single-player experiences when they were allowed to. The studio last released Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy in 2021. Amazing game. Even if you're like peak Marvel burnout, that game is really charming and super fun. And they have developed a legacy of working on major titles like Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, which was a fantastic revival of that series, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. These layoffs follow a previous round last year when parent company Embracer Group, womp womp, canceled an unannounced Deus Ex game, cutting 97 jobs.
But that's not all the bad layoff news. Cyan Worlds, the developer of Myst, said it recently had to let go of 12 employees, half its staff. So it was bad.
That is really bad. They also alluded to the tough state of the industry right now, which we all know. And there's just been layoff. I mean, it's almost, I think, weekly at this point.
Yeah, they said, quote, industry conditions have forced us into a tricky spot where we are having to weigh the future health of our studio against the month-to-month realities of game development in 2025. That was a statement from the studio posted on X. It sucks. This was one of the longtime developers, one of the old hats. And the Riven remake they just did was amazing. You wouldn't think that games like Mr. Riven could be totally engrossing in modern day, but they super are. So I recommend it, even though it's a little too late for half the studio.
All right, let's do a 5-second review. It Takes Two. This is one of those split screen co-op games, local co-op that Hazelight made. Okay, I played this one with my kid on the couch. We beat a boss together. We high-fived. Totally wholesome game. Like, it's one of the most wholesome gaming experiences I think I've ever had. Like, work together with my child to beat a boss. Super fun, highly recommended.
Brian, why didn't you play the new one, Split Fiction?
We were playing it on the Switch, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't have a thing, yeah.
All right. I always like to ask those questions, so I always wonder why you're playing games from 7,000 years ago. Yeah, just wondering. All right, let's talk about the video games coming up this week. First up, South of Midnight. This is a new action adventure from Compulsion Games. Explore the mythos and confront mysterious creatures of the Deep South in this modern folktale while learning to weave an ancient power to surmount obstacles and unravel your family's hidden past. Comes to PC and Xbox Series X on April 8th.
Star Overdrive is a high-speed action adventure set in an open world. Race across an alien planet on your hoverboard, mastering tricks, battling enemies, solving puzzles, and using your powers to overcome challenges and shape your destiny. Game's coming to the Switch on April 10th.
And finally, Monster Energy Supercross 25. Experience the thrill of racing on newly designed tracks that replicate real-world events and compete against the latest roster of professional riders. Forge your path in a revamped career featuring intense competitions, rivalries, and strategic choices. It comes to PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series X April 10th.
All right, well, we'd like to shout out a few folks. They directly support our show, Inside Games, on Patreon every single month, which is more brave than ever. Now that gaming stuff is about to get more expensive, we're sorry, it is. Kyle Heaton, Monkey Butlers, and Evan S. Compton.
Yes, we're more grateful for your direct support than ever, because I think we probably maybe expect that people's belts are about to tighten a bit, so perhaps the good times are over, but thank you for the support up until now and hopefully into the future. Bakubam, Brown Sugar, and Nick Calderon. Listen, between us, if you choose to switch to over our Patreon, I'll understand.